Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. This is the Google Photography Prize Hangout with photography experts. And today we're going to be talking with Martin Schoeller, one of the preeminent portrait photographers of our time. Martin's very, very well known. He's had a long and illustrious career of photographing celebrities, people of power, politicians, and the everyday man on the streets, and has built a very strong and important reputation in the photography community. So we're joined by Martin, and we're also joined by Brian Rose, who's the Google Plus Photo Community Manager, and he's going to be streaming some comments through and also throwing in some of his own questions. And we're also joined by Viktor Johansson, who's the winner of the Google Photography Prize 2012. And part of the prize, as I understand it, was Google provided for Viktor an opportunity to go and work with a mentor, with a photographer. And in this case, he was allowed to choose the photographer. And my understanding is he said Martin Schoeller, nobody. So that happened. So Viktor has been spending the last 10 days being mentored by Martin, assisting, going off on trips, and so on. So the first thing, I just wanted to kick off the conversation with asking Viktor, as the kind of winner of the prize, why did you want to work with Martin? How did you find out about his work? What was it about it that kind of struck you, and why was that kind of a dream come true?
Very good question. I'm curious myself.
I love Martin's work. The subtle portraits that he takes. It's simple, but it still strikes you very hard. They're often funny and like a distance. I searched the web looking for all the pictures that I was inspired by, and I didn't know who took them. And then I started like looking up all the pictures, and it was all Martin Schoeller. And I scanned the web, and I saw some interviews with him, and he seemed like a really nice guy. And he delivered, I can say that. And also the fact that he does commercial work, but he also has like a personal project going, like with his close-up book and the bodybuilder book. So it's fun because when you work commercially all the time, you kind of get not sold out, but you have to have something going on for yourself so you can express your own photography. And I really like that about Martin, because he's always thinking about his own artistic style.
Did you see there was a connection between the work that you were making or that you wanted to make and the work that Martin was making, or was it more to do with the kind of philosophy and the way he kind of runs his career and his work?
I'd say both. I'm very interested in portraits, and just the close-up series, when you take famous people and you put them next to like just people on the street. Yes, I like it very much.
Okay, Martin, how did you start? With your first of all getting into photography, but then in particular, kind of streamlining your career and your work and focusing on portraiture in particular.
Well, I didn't know what I wanted to do until I was about 20 years old, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, I'm applying to this photo school. Do you want to apply as well? Maybe we can go to the school together." And they ended up taking me and not my friend. But once I signed up for this photo school, I was a little bit at a loss at that time. I kind of fell in love with it, and I knew that this was something that I could be good at. I had this sense that if I really committed myself fully, that there was a chance for me to make it somehow and make a living of it. You never know how successful you will be. But and then after going to school, I worked for a couple of different photographers in Germany. One of them was Uwe Düttmann, a quite well-known advertising photographer in Europe. And I just felt like there was nobody else to work for. There was nobody else whose work I really liked enough to spend crazy amounts of hours working for free or for very little money. And I thought, if I did assist, at least I should be working for somebody whose work I like. And Andy Leibovitz was on top of my list back then. So was Irving Penn. And I wasn't quite sure if I might want to do maybe also more fashion photography, which has proven not to be the right kind of photography for me. Yeah, as a fashion photographer, you have to love fashion. You have to, like really care about what all the designers do and what is hip and what is in. And I go shopping once a year, buy 10 t-shirts, and that's about the extent of my shopping. So, I'm the opposite mentally from a fashion photographer. But if you're young and you're thinking, oh my God, it would be fun hanging out with models, I could be a fashion photographer, it's basically photographing beautiful girls. But, that's obviously not what the fashion photography is about. Anyway, so then I came here to the United States and I called up Irving Penn, I called up Andy Leibovitz, I ran out of money, I went back home, I got a little grant, and finally, I was able to start working with Andy for 3 years and learned a lot from her. And I can only recommend to anyone starting out, if you think about what kind of photography you want to do, and then find somebody whose work you like and try to work with those people, because it definitely makes a huge difference. But it has made a huge difference for me.
And what about Victor was talking about how he really appreciated the fact that you were working both commercially but also kind of personally and pursuing projects.
Well, I don't think, I think too many people overthink this idea of planning your career, of like trying to, guide it. I think it's hard enough to take a good picture. If you just are critical of your own work and basically, work very hard at photographing something and then coming to the conclusion that maybe 2 or 3 weeks of your effort were spent in vain and that the work is not really that great, and then going out and doing it again, that should be your goal. As long as you take pictures, everything else will fall into place. Ideally you want to have the opportunity to get some commercial work in order to make a living. And the fine art world is just as difficult to break into, or even more difficult and more hard to plan for than the commercial world. Galleries have the interest of selling work. Most galleries don't have the interest of like finding great artists. They're trying to find artists whose work they can sell. So, you just try to take the best work you can, and then I think people will find you, and magazines will find you, or maybe an advertising agency, or you find a gallery, and just try to come up with projects. Don't even overthink it, just do it.
Okay. And in terms of, I know you photograph in a wide variety of ways, and you make all sorts of portraits, but you've become really renowned for this. You have kind of a trademark. It's behind you, and Victor was talking about it as well. This kind of close-up. Can you talk a little bit about kind of developing that trademark style, and also, pursuing that and keeping and holding on to it for quite a long time. Maintaining that style, that presence within portraiture.
Yeah, I think that, I ended up doing these close-up portraits for various reasons. I always kind of was drawn to come in really tight and really close. Even in my photo school days, I just found some pictures from back then. I ended up really photographing these homeless people, and I always photographed them really close up. So I don't know why, I just ended up. And then working with Andy Leibovitz, I did many lighting tests. I spent weeks testing all these different ways to light people. And I would have photographed assistants, or we would have stand-in models at times. And in order to see what the lighting really does, it was before the days of retouching. So if we had an older woman coming up, an older actress, and Annie really wanted to make her look good, we would get a stand-in in New York and spend 2 days, photograph hundreds of rolls of film, trying to come up with a lighting scenario that was the most flattering. And again, I would come in fairly tight in order to see how the light really affects the face. And during one of these lighting tests, I stumbled across these Kino flows that I use, which are basically just fluorescent light tubes. And I really liked the look of them. And since I've always spent a lot of time in the darkroom back then, I knew how to manipulate the image later on in the darkroom to darken and lighten certain areas in order to make these lights really work for me. That's kind of what happened. And then I think I just got lucky in a sense that I was doing these close-up portraits when nobody else was doing them. It was the middle of the 90s. Photoshop just was kicking in. Everything was about beautifying and glamour, and photographers were trying to show off that they can do shoots with huge production value. and everybody was admiring Annie for these like gorgeous colors and the huge sets and the beautiful clothes. And I kind of stood out. I was very different at that time with these close-up portraits that were so much just about the person, were kind of the opposite of what people were doing. And it took 2 years after I left Annie for things to really start up. But then I had this kind of commodity that nobody else had at that time, and then everybody wanted these like portraits. And I remember I got one job to photograph Vanessa Redgrave, and I've been rollerblading for 2 years all over New York, dropping off my portfolio to save like the token money, the money for the subway. And nobody wanted any of these close-up portraits until this one photo editor at Time Out gave me the opportunity to have 10 minutes with Vanessa Redgrave in one of these press junkets. And I got this beautiful close-up of her. She has a little smile on her face, and this older lady, and she looks very sympathetic and great, and it's intimate. And after that, all of a sudden, everybody wanted them. It was like an avalanche.
Mm. And also going back, I mean, because you've been working with Viktor, and Viktor's come over to assist you, and you've been talking quite a bit about assisting and working with Annie. I just wanted to talk. I just was curious, how important was it for you to have a mentor, or have somebody that you could kind of learn from and grow with, and then how do you kind of translate that to being the mentor and being somebody who's kind of leading somebody else's career along the way and inspiring them?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that that Annie was my mentor per se. We didn't have any discussions about photography. There wasn't much, you're an assistant. You're there to do a job, and you're getting paid to fulfill your job. It's a working relationship. It's not, it's not that she saw herself as a teacher. You just learn by doing. You learn by being on photo shoots, by watching somebody. It's I think you have many mentors, throughout the years, and maybe some of them might be, helping you develop your own style just by doing their own work. For me, I would say very important were Bernd and Hilla Becher, those industrial photographers that these entire books of water towers. Mm-hmm. Or, I took away, from them I took away this idea of being very consistent and just sticking with one concept, just photographing all these close-up portraits of all these people, and this repetition idea that then allows these faces to be compared. And I would say like Richard Avedon mentored me in a way. I never met the man, but I took away from him that you should be concerned about your subjects. If he would have photographed me, I would look like a mentally challenged person. You always found this like very weird moment in a person. He wasn't necessarily looking to show somebody for who they are or take a sympathetic picture. Everybody would come across as a freak. But that's very important nowadays too, with the retouching, and everybody is looking 10 years younger and 20 pounds lighter. To keep in mind that a good photograph isn't necessarily about the person looking good. Mm. And from Annie, working with Annie, I learned lighting. I learned how big productions work. I saw like the biggest photo shoots you can imagine. Sometimes we would do a photo shoot would cost like hundreds of thousands of dollars, just one story for Vanity Fair magazine. And then I had Elizabeth Biondi at the New Yorker that gave me, that I worked with for 13 years, a photo editor who would literally, I always say, beat the best out of me by putting me on the spot and pushing me and telling me straight up if she doesn't like something. I like that picture. You got to do it again. Yeah. Okay.
And Viktor, how about you? I mean, what have you, over the last 10 days, well, why don't you tell us about some of the experiences you've had? Like, what have you been up to, and what have you observed, watched, learned?
It's been about working with the twins book. So basically I started here at the studio, and we shot some twins here in New York, and then the craziness began. We took a road trip down to Twinsburg in Ohio, and we set up there, and we were just out casting twins and helping Martin to get twins and just prepare 2 days of shooting. And I worked with very close to Martin's first assistant, Mike, and he's been really great. So he helped me like to think in the mind of the first assistant, and it's just been a lot of fun working hard, and we had some good times at the party for all of the twins. And you know, it was kind of weird in the beginning. Yes, I think there was 2007 set of identical twins there.
Right.
It was just that, and being in New York and America for like the first time. So many new things, and everything here is big, and it's just been not overwhelming, but close.
Yeah. How has it changed your perspective on like kind of the career of the photographer, the photographic industry? I mean, was it all that it was cracked up to be? Did some of the romance go away? Did some of the romance kind of grow?
Oh yeah, I'd say it has grown enormously.
Yeah.
Martin's team here, everyone has been so nice. Everyone, such a great spirit, and it's fun because in Sweden we don't really have like big production stuff. And you know, the gear that we took to Twinsburg, I thought that was a lot of gear, and everyone just kept saying us, "This is the lightest gear you'll ever see." And it's been really good.
Great. Brian, do you have any questions or input coming from the stream?
There's nothing coming in from the stream yet, but I was just curious to hear more about your trips. Like, can you tell me more stories about, Victor, can you tell me more stories about, you know, either things that you learned or the big takeaway that you gained from Martin?
What I've learned, it's just nice to study another photographer, how he conducts himself with the subjects. And I guess everyone does it differently. Martin has his style, and I've observed that, how he like makes all these twins and sometimes quadruplets, like goes in and makes everyone just so relaxed. It's a friendly spirit at once, and I think that's a good thing, a great thing, that you can just take a room and everyone is just so in on it. Everyone wants to make a great picture.
Mm.
And that really helps when everyone's
Martin, how would you describe your kind of your approach to a subject? Like when you first kind of, whether you have 10 minutes with Vanessa Redgrave or you have an hour and a half with some quadruplets, you know, I mean, how do you develop a relationship? How do you try to get what, you know, like you said, like with Avedon, he had a very kind of interesting repertoire with his subjects. I'm just curious how you go about finding your subjects and then interacting with them.
Well, it all depends on who it is. You know, and Twinsburg is not a typical situation for us because we were photographing people that want to be photographed, that want to be in the book, that are happy to participate, that normally don't get much attention, that don't think about their appearance too much, about, you know, they don't have to sell anything. So it's an ideal scenario. I mean, it's an easier scenario if I photograph a famous person living in Hollywood that is promoting a new movie and has been photographed 20 times in the last half a year and done like 50 interviews, you know, and is just sick and tired of being there and doesn't even want the attention. You know, it's a very different setup. So each shoot requires its own approach.
Okay.
Oftentimes, you know, I have ideas. You know, the hardest photo shoots, if you have ideas and you want to do something conceptual, how do you get the person to do, you know, how do you get Angelina Jolie to have blood on her lip? Or how do you get Quentin Tarantino to be in a straitjacket surrounded by doves? I compare those kind of photo shoots to 30% photography and 70% a diplomat, politician, marketing person, you know. Photography kind of takes the back seat, and it's all about how you approach it, how you talk to them about it, who you convince of the idea first. You know, you can't tell the publicists beforehand what your plans are because then they shoot the idea down before you even get there. On the other hand, you know, somebody has to pay for it, so you know you have to talk the magazine into possibly spending money on a photograph or on a setup that might never take place, and so it's you know, it's a lot of diplomacy.
Okay, great. And what about in Twinsburg? I mean, I'm just curious. Was did Viktor have any particular? Did he change the dynamic in any kind of way when you were out there, or you know?
Yeah, well, Google called up and said we have this young photographer who wants to work with you for a week or two, and I said sure, why not? And you never know who's going to show up, and we are all very pleasantly surprised. He really fit in well into our dynamic here, and everybody likes him. And we had a lot of fun on the road, and yeah, he feels like a family member just after a week.
Yeah, cool. What kind of responsibilities did you have, Viktor? Do you feel like you on set were you kind of running around grabbing coffees and picking up lights and?
No, it's been super great. Actually, the responsibilities that I wanted to have was free to me to ask for. So if I wanted to load film, I could do it. If I wanted to set up the lights, I did that. Basically, I had like a free card. I could just observe everything, and if I wanted to get in on something, totally okay.
Mm.
But I spent a lot of time observing Martin and a lot of time working with the first assistant, Mike.
Yeah.
They would go out and cast this, you have to imagine you had a festival and there's about 2,000 twins. I'm locked up in a community center with my studio set up, and basically Mike and Viktor would recruit all the people that I was photographing. So they would go out and talk to twins and tell them about the project, maybe take a snapshot, come running back, show me pictures of them. Hey, do you want these twins? Do you want those twins? These guys might be great. Or if they found somebody that Mike knew I would like, he would just bring them along. And so mostly casting you were doing, right?
Yeah, mostly casting, and just running around trying to find the most interesting faces and person who has a lot of character.
How did you know what you thought Martin would like, or what he was after? I mean, were you given a script or a premise, or was it just go out and find the best looking people you can, the most interesting looking people you can?
At start, we just looked for the most interesting people, and then it kind of planned out because Martin knows what he's missing for the book, so we got some directions what we were looking for, and that made it quite easier because 2,000 twins it's a lot of twins.
And were you doing, Martin? Were you doing close-ups as well on the twins?
Yeah, it's just basically the same style as a close-up book, just straightforward close-up portraits of twins side by side. And yeah, the book is coming out in October, November already.
Cool. Yeah, so that, I mean, going back to the Beckers, I mean, that's a very kind of similar idea. This idea that you're finding almost identical subject matter, but then and photographing them in a very kind of consistent and identical way. But through that, you're kind of highlighting the subtle differences. Is that the kind of idea behind it, or?
Yeah, that's part of the idea. That's been like an ongoing theme with my work that for these portrait books, I would, there's going to be another one coming out maybe in a year or two that's very different. But with these close-up series or with my bodybuilder series that I have the same parameters, and everybody, no matter who it is being photographed in the same style.
Mm.
If it's my mom or my dad or a homeless guy or the president, and basically, invite people to compare faces and wrinkles and so forth.
What do you feel like the face kind of reveals about a person? I mean, what is it about that surface that you think kind of invites people in?
In the end, having photographed so many people close up, you have to ask yourself, does a face really reveal that much? And for my next book, I'm thinking maybe to include some portraits of people that obviously have done horrible things in their lives. Maybe go to prison and find some murderers, and explore to see, do they look different? Can you tell by their face what kind of life they have led, what kind of decisions they have made? And what kind of got me started with this idea that faces don't really, reveal that much about a personality was when I saw a picture a long time ago. Maybe I was like 20 years old. I saw a picture of Mengele and playing with kids, and the dog was running around. You see this image of this man. He looks like this really sweet, nice guy playing with his kids and this dog, and then you notice, oh, but he's wearing some kind of Nazi uniform, and then you read the caption and it says Dr. Mengele, who must have been one of the most horrible people ever to walk this world and this planet. So, it made me realize, you can't really tell by a face necessarily what goes on in a person's mind.
Mm. Mm.
And these twin studies, I think, are more about aging and showing, and again, questioning these people are born with almost the same genetic information, but they look different. And oftentimes when twins get older, they start to look more and more different, maybe depending on what kind of lives they have led. Maybe they've gone through a divorce, or if they've been smoking or drinking or drug abusers, or more exposed to sunlight, depending on what kind of job they work, indoor, outdoor. And that's kind of maybe those kind of things are the only thing you really can take away from a face.
And what about from like a cultural, because obviously you're making lots of editorial and commercial portraits as well as doing your own personal work. I mean, what, as kind of somebody who's, at the top of the heap in terms of making portraiture and portraying the people of our generation, what purpose do you feel like portraiture is serving in the kind of grand scheme of things? What you're making, how is that feeding into the culture and the society that we're living in? And it's a broad question, but it's
Yeah, I mean, you just have to ask yourself, what kind of portraits do you want to take? And I'm more, I think there's plenty of people taking beautified images. So I rather want to be in the lines of an Irving Penn or Richard Avedon than in the lines of a fashion. Too many fashion photographers are doing portraits nowadays. Everybody looks great. Everybody looks fantastic. And, pictures feel completely arbitrary, exchangeable. You don't even know anymore. It could be any kind of actress in the same photograph. You've seen the same photograph many times with different people in it, it feels like. So portraiture in magazines nowadays is more like advertising photography. And there's oftentimes you don't even know if it's an ad or an editorial picture. And I'm trying to do portraits in a classic sense. That a portrait is always a lie. There is no such thing as an honest portrait, because you're only capturing a person like a split second, and you're deciding which expression is the right expression. So you're making a lot of decisions as a photographer. Even in these very straightforward portraits, there's a lot of decisions that come into play. But in the grand scheme of things, I think there's still pictures that you can have a more honest portrait or a less honest portrait. You can be on either side of the spectrum. And I rather want to be on the spectrum where it feels like you get to know the person a little bit, and something that feels intimate, and to take intimate portraits.
Great. Brian, do you have anything?
I have a question about, Martin, how you feel how the web is changing how photographers can gain exposure for their work. Victor talked a lot about how he was looking at web searches or photos on the web, and that's how he came across your work and saw that your name reappeared so many times. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how the web is helping you gain exposure for your own work.
You're asking the wrong person, because I'm kind of a dinosaur. We're still shooting film on this in Twinsburg, so I do have a digital camera now as well. I'm not on Facebook or Twitter. I've never been on Twitter or Facebook or any of those social media sites. So obviously the world is changing. I'm doing this now. I did an Instagram feed for the New Yorker last week. And I think the biggest issue that there's so much information out there, and you have to, you really have to edit constantly to decide which is important, what is not. Otherwise, you just end up looking at so much crap. I hope that all these like gazillion blogs at some point will come down to just a very few important ones, because anyone is like putting anything out there, if it's true or not true. Doesn't matter. Nobody proves it. Nobody double checks anything. There's just so much information and so much overflow of things that I think young people are overwhelmed because they don't know anymore. All these conspiracy theories that are out there now. Anyone can make any wild theory and doesn't have to be responsible for their words. And I think that's a bad development.
Victor, how has the internet kind of fed into your understanding of photography and your use? Because you know, you obviously are using social media and exposing yourself in that way. I mean, do you find that it's just as treacherous territory as Martin was describing?
Well, for me, it's really good because I take pictures all the time, and I don't have like a bunch of magazines and newspapers where I can publish them yet. So yeah, I use G Plus and Facebook and Tumblr, so I can just post my pictures and constantly just put my work out there. Basically,